This One's Wife. Scrubs. Hello, I'm HG Tudor. It's Tuesday. That means that another episode of the execrable podcast from This One's Wife has appeared. This time she's speaking to somebody called Heather Hasson. And let's have a look at the background to her company in advance of the wisdom that undoubtedly This One's Wife will extract. Apparently, Heather Hasson is involved in a company that's called Figs, and it was founded by Heather and Trina Spear in Los Angeles in 2013. Hasson had the business idea when she realized that unlike companies such as Lululemon, Under Armour and Nike that make clothes for athletes, there were no companies making fitted uniforms for healthcare professionals. Spear worked on Wall Street at the time and helped Hasson develop the business idea. Hasson and Spear started Figs using only their personal savings. They designed an alternative to the common scrubs available. Initially, they sold their product out of the parking lots of hospitals. Well, This One's Wife has plenty of experience of standing around in parking lots, so undoubtedly she'll have some key questions to ask there, and they obtained feedback from staff. In 2013, Hasson and Spear raised a $2 million seed round, so they wouldn't run out of product. Well, I'm sure she'll have some pearls of wisdom then to share with This One's Wife, who ran out of product very quickly and indeed hasn't restocked in the 4 or 5 weeks since the supposed launch of As Ever. In 2014 and 2015, they raised an additional $3 million. In 2016, the Lululemon-backed venture capital fund Campfire led the Series A funding round, which raised $5 million. In 2017, Thomas Tull, businessman and founder of Legendary Pictures, invested $65 million in the company and became majority owner of Figs. Others who have invested include Will Smith, Irving Place Capital, former Lululemon CEO Christine Day, and more Davidow Ventures. In December 2015, Figs was selected to join the Endeavour Network, a startup accelerator and mentorship program. As of 2018, the company had raised a total of $75 million in funding. Figs was recognized as one of the fastest growing companies in the United States, with the company having a 3-year growth of 9,948%. It added face masks to its products during the coronavirus pandemic in 2020 and expanded sales to Australia and the United Kingdom. In 2020, revenue doubled to $263 million and profits were almost $50 million. In May 2021, Figs filed for initial public offering for $3 billion, and on the 27th of May 2021, it became the first company led by 2 female co-founders to trade on the New York Stock Exchange. Well, what appears to be an interesting journey, using own personal savings, so putting one's own money at risk, selling product out of a parking lot, getting feedback from staff, undertaking several funding rounds, getting major investors, balancing all of that, doubling revenue during the coronavirus pandemic, possible allegations of profiteering off the back and misery of others. Maybe that's something that This One's Wife will explore, and then a listing on the New York Stock Exchange. Quite the journey, as a podcaster might observe. Undoubtedly, This One's Wife, as a consequence of her brilliant forensic interviewing technique, will have plenty of key questions to ask Heather Hasson to extract the best from her about this particular female founder. Now, as you know, I do not bother wasting my time listening to the podcast. I'll allow somebody in mainstream media to undertake that task, and it's fallen to Mark Duell of the Daily Mail, who reports, This One's Wife has spoken about getting your hands dirty as a company founder. The only time I think that This One's Wife gets her hands dirty is when she's either applying bronzer or she's manhandling Prince Harry's pink pods. Apparently also, she doesn't have time to cook every day. Right, so This is the woman that's trying to convince us all that she's a brilliant cook, that she has all of these recipes, that she's a real doyen of the kitchen, but then a few breaths later, oh, I don't really have time to cook every day. Presumably, this is because it is very time-consuming, not ironing your clothing, wearing ill-fitting clothing, sending orders for spring onions to be obtained from the shop, and then wandering around your garden carrying them to make it look like you've extracted them from the earth. I suppose it's quite time-consuming having 2 children clinging to you so that you have pictures taken of them to utilise for your Mother's Day Instagram announcement. It must also be the fact that she does the school run, the pick-up and the drop-off every morning. It must also be particularly taxing time-wise for her, rage scrolling, clearing away the previous evening's empties, going along and throwing water over Harry as he's sleeping on the compost heap outside. No wonder she doesn't have time to cook every day. Speaking about entrepreneurs who start their own business, this one's wife said it can get messy. Well, I know the bukkake parties that she hosts do, and the best founders are not afraid to get their hands dirty. And I don't mean play dirty. Oh, well, if you were going to talk about playing dirty, you'd know well about that. I mean, when it's clean up on aisle 5 time, you were the first person there with a mop. What? This one's wife doesn't turn up being the first person with a mop. She only turns up if there are some cameras there, so that she can be seen, for instance, being a grief ghoul. She's the last person that rolls up her sleeves and gets stuck in, once again exhibiting her delusion. Undoubtedly, though, we're going to hear from Heather Hasson, and presumably she's now going to come up with some observations, perhaps tell us a little bit about what it was like starting the business and how they used their savings, perhaps focusing on certain key aspects that they determined the best things to use that limited availability of money at that early stage. Oh, no, this one's wife's got some more to say. The whole point for me, and you'll probably speak to this too, is when you see something that is an easy solve in everyday, that's not complicated. Yes, we know what easy means. That's not fussy. How do you get your hands involved and change the way of thinking surrounding it so it doesn't feel daunting? That doesn't even make sense. If you see something that's an easy solve, how can it be daunting? It follows it wouldn't be, because it's easy to deal with, so it's not daunting. So that's a stupid observation. It's a stupid question. She doesn't even think about the bollocks that comes out of her mouth. It's just this word salad. Let's find out what Heather Hasson has to say. Maybe we will now get some insight. Oh, no, this one's wife's still talking. I see vegetables, talking about Harry presumably, and I see takeout, because I don't have time to cook every day. And I go, all right, but how do I still make this flattering and beautiful and present well and something that people find appetizing? So you're telling me that your takeout arrives and rather just spooning it out onto a plate or a bowl, you think to yourself, although my family are really hungry and they're waiting for their food, I've now got to fuck around with it to try and present it to make it look like I've elevated it in some way. Harry's there, salivating. He's so hungry. Get back, you ginger bastard! Get back in the cage! It's not time to eat until I've elevated it. I need to put some flour sprinkles on it. Get back, I tell you! Is that what's happening at Monty's shit show? The poor bloke's absolutely Hank Marvin, but he can't get anything to eat because as soon as it arrives from Deliveroo or wherever it is, Harry tries to get there first, but he's beaten back with an electric cattle prod, and he whimpers, hiding in the corner as she then takes it through into the kitchen and starts arsing around with it. This woman is unhinged, isn't she? To suggest all you do when your takeout arrives is you eat it. You don't need to present it beautifully. It just demonstrates how she just plays at things. She probably makes out that she's made this. You may have watched the excellent programme The Middle, and in it, the hard-pressed mother would often go and get burger and fries and milkshakes and whatever. When she'd come in, she'd say, I've cooked dinner. It was a standing joke, but it's probably the type of thing that this one's wife does. Well, after that bullshit, are we going to hear from Heather Hasson? Oh, we are. She tells us, I think when you take something so simple in your everyday life and you elevate it and you make it elegant, I think that's what makes it so special. Clearly reading from the script that's been given to her by this one's wife, that's all the insight we've got so far. So nothing about the challenges of starting up the business, nothing about how to go about and get funding, how they encourage people to invest, what they needed to sell to people as an idea, the pitfalls of those funding rounds, what it was like standing in a parking lot selling, what did the staff do, were they constructive, how did they deal with people that weren't impressed at having to pay quite a large sum of money for stuff that somebody's going to yak up over. No, none of that. We don't even get the origin story, which as I explained at the beginning. Now we're back to this one's wife, of course. She's now telling us, this one's wife also talked about her experience studying theatre and international relations at Northwestern University, how that helped her prepare to be a company founder. Yeah. I think in other words, this one's wife has thought, well, because I am brilliant at business, I need to be able to find something to talk about. And, yes, I went to university and I studied theatre, not business administration, not economics, but theatre and international relations. That helps you become a company founder. She went on to explain, I was a theatre major and part of the programme was that you couldn't just do the acting. Well, we know that. We've seen you act. You had to do soup to nuts every part of what a production would entail, which I actually think is incredible training for when you're running a team, because you appreciate what the sound person does and what the lighting person does. Well, you should know what the lighting person does. That was your father. But wardrobe department and sewing was part of it too, so I'm comfortable with the sewing machine. Yeah, so comfortable that you don't adjust any of your clothing so it actually fits you. Fuck off. You don't sit at a sewing machine. There's another lie. She also talked, oh right, we're not hearing from Heather Hasson again. That's it from her, is it? The Duchess also talked about creating her lifestyle business as ever. She added, the types of minutiae that at the onset you kind of have to be across every single granular buzzword detail. For me, I don't know how to not have love in the details. It's just empty word salad, isn't it? Described her busy life establishing her company, the Duchess said, as I've been building as ever. It resembles a bomb site if you're doing that analogy. Oh, let me tell you, it is just a constant state of recalibration. Another word that she's picked up on that she throws in there. There's a joy in that, but we are always in motion. If you're a founder yourself, you know exactly what I mean, because we're moving at work speed, problem solving, filling gaps in real time, scratching a million tiny things off your to-do list, but not in that fun way like a lotto ticket. Christ almighty. This one's wife previously demonstrated how to plate up Chinese takeaway food beautifully, as well as making spaghetti, honey cake and salt-baked fish on her Netflix show with love. This one's wife. And in today's podcast, the Duchess compared her gesture to Hasson, who was inspired to transform uncomfortable and unflattering healthcare clothes, and whose firm became the first company co-founded by a female duo to begin trading on the New York Stock Exchange. This one's wife said, and for you go, hold on, this is something that you're doing every day. You're wearing this uniform every day. You're eating every day. How do we elevate that? Jesus Christ! In a way that you feel really good about what you're doing and you feel proud about what you're wearing and you're able to have some functionality with it. In some ways, they're actually a different version of the same thing. And that's it. Now, undoubtedly, there was more in this podcast, but it's quite clearly that it was utter drivel, beige, and pointless. We get to hear nothing from Heather Hasson because presumably this one's wife talked at her throughout it, trying to suggest that her business, which hasn't sold anything, hasn't been restocked in weeks, is comparable to a business that has been floated on the stock market at $3 billion. Heather Hasson doesn't have a huge following on social media. It's only a few thousand, and she's not somebody that I've heard of. And one wonders if it's actually the other investors that came on board that have really injected something into what was ostensibly a decent enough idea, but it's other people that have really propelled it. But we don't know, because we're not able to access that information, because this one's wife never asked questions like that, which would be, is the success really down to your investors and their business acumen? Are they the ones that really elevated your business? But we're missed. We don't get anything about the business. No business insight once again. Instead, we're subjected to the banal beige of this insufferable woman who just cannot help but talk about herself. And it's utter drivel, isn't it? It's absolutely meaningless observations. It demonstrates that how deluded she is, that she believes that she is an entrepreneur. She compares herself to people that have actually built things up. She hasn't. And once again, she basically invites a guest on to enable her to talk about herself. Heather Hasson clearly hasn't been able to say much at all. She hasn't been able to explain anything that might be interesting. It's not a conversation. It's a monologue, suggesting that she mops floors. She just babbles. Long, nonsensical word salads. She doesn't get her hands dirty. She makes her staff do things. She hasn't done anything. No products have reached any customers with as ever. People are still waiting for refunds. Nothing really has been sold because nobody's actually been able to buy anything. Grift boxes have been sent out. But of course, this lazy, deluded narcissist is given a platform to talk utter bunkum. And once again, we get to hear nothing from the actual founder. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for listening.